Something interesting has been going on. If you guys will remember, and I got to take you back about 2 weeks, but Brock Lesnar out of nowhere announced his retirement. Now, there was immediate speculation there that was quickly brushed off, not only by the MMA mainstream sites, but also by bigger news sites such as TMZ. And what I'm talking about is the speculation that Brock Lesnar has called a halt to his entire career and has returned to the UFC because he had some kind of an issue with Usada. Now, why that was blown off, and I also blew that off, there just wasn't a lot of legs around it. It didn't seem as though that would be a reasonable solution, a retirement. Now, had he ran into some hot water with Usada, that would bring a conclusion to his mixed martial arts career. But aside from that, there really wasn't very much evidence. Guys, I don't want to add to something right now. I want to come to you candidly and tell you that I do not have information, but I am starting to hear things from people who generally do have the correct information that perhaps that wasn't totally wrong. And we're going to need a little bit of time. We're only going to know with time. The new way that Usada is operating, okay? I'll remind you of the old way first, which was a guy flags. Boom. They put out a boilerplate statement. The only thing that they change between athletes is simply the name. John Doe, right? Fill in the blank, and then the whole rest of it, uniform statement. We get it. But when Usada got confronted with 5 people who were later cleared, and then Usada was able to look at it and go, you know what, we didn't totally clear. I mean, we cleared them. But in the world of PR and the mess that they went through, in the mind's eye, the day of the internet, the sponsors that were already lost, it's just very hard to unfry that egg. So what we're going to do now is if we flag somebody, we are not going to say a word. They will very quietly not be booked for a contest, but we will also very privately see the process through to the very end. When we make our release, we will not only tell you who, what, and when, but we will also tell you what the remedy was. Whether it's a disciplinary action or a clearing of the athlete. But we will present one statement to you in its entirety. Okay, great. Really good way to do things. There is now some people that are saying that they have dug into this, and that is the very spot that Brock Lesnar is in. I don't know that I buy that. I don't know that I'm willing to come on board and say that. But if you were a level of conspiracy theory, or as we do over here, we just simply speculate and visit and talk, there is some clues to point to that is a possibility. The first of which is that Brock Lesnar retired out of nowhere. He retired out of nowhere after taking a lesser WWE schedule. He retired out of nowhere after going into training for 12 full months. He retired out of nowhere after entering and clearing the USADA protocol of things that he had to pay for from his last outing at UFC 200 against Mark Hunt. It looked like everything was a go. He had a world title fight. He had a main event. He had a huge payday. He had Daniel Cormier standing for him. I mean, this was not just a return fight. If you're going to return to fight Mark Hunt in a main event, it would seem as though that same athlete who just went through everything that I laid out for Brock would return to fight in a main event for a world championship. It would seem that. It would also seem that even if this is not correct, and quite frankly, I don't know that I'm buying it, other than the people that I'm hearing it from have a very good track record. If it wasn't for that and for the sources, I wouldn't even be talking to you right now. But we can't fully put this to rest, perhaps, until 2 months goes by and we're only 2 weeks in. Once we cross that 2-month barrier, we need to drop this whole speculation and topic. Because if there was nothing that happened, there is nothing that will happen. It's not as though Usada at some point will come out and go, oh, and hey, by the way, we've heard some rumblings out there and they're absolutely not true and Brock was close. We won't hear that. We will only hear if there was an adverse reaction to the process, and we will hear that within 60 days, of which we've got 45 left. But what I am offering to you is it is a very strange circumstance, and it seemed that there was then a later dialogue that came in and said, no, the reason Brock walked away is because the pay-per-view model has changed, and therefore he can't collect his pay-per-view points, and therefore he lost his enticement to do this. Now, I can tell you now, that is not what happened. I don't know what happened. I think it's probably a pretty straightforward one. Either we're going to find something out in the next 45 days, or two, and far more likely, if I'm being fair, far more likely, he started training and his body was just sore and tired, and he wasn't getting the same reaction as fast as he had in the past. And he said, I'm done. I'm going to do the responsible thing for myself. I'm not going to let my mind and heart that is in this go out and write a check that my ass and my health and my pride can't cash. I'm going to move on. That's just knowing Brock and knowing him since 1999. That's just not the guy I know. It's just not. I've never bought the argument that it was about the money, by the way. I know the UFC has been more than generous for him. I know he can make in one night in the UFC, and I'm well aware of the days and the preparation that goes into it. And you guys always push back when I say one night. But for one night, he can make what he would make in an entire year wrestling. And one thing Brock hates to do, it's not wrestling or fighting that he doesn't like to do. He doesn't like travel. He doesn't travel well. He's a big guy. He's a homebody. He just doesn't really like it. So he can encompass all of that with one airplane ride from Minnesota to Las Vegas. Let's see where this all goes. It's just with the evidence that we've been given so far, I don't think any of it's right. If there is no flagging by Usada, we may never know. But we also may hear something somewhere in the next 45 days. There is definitely in the room of conspiracy. And one thing that Brock has working against him, and he's got it working against him right now. Now I'm guilty. Now I'm being a dirtbag and doing it against him, is people talk behind your back because they have to when you don't come out and talk to the people. That isn't fair and that isn't right. But that is a reality of what's happening to Brock. And it's happening to him right now. Right this very second. Because he does not come out and because we do have an interest in him and because he is a spectacle and a spectacular attraction, it's hard to let it go. It really is.